It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Monday, July 1st, your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that's got a special guest to talk draft on today's show.
You're Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, and thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. I am Rachel Donner. You can find me on Twitter at rmiriam. I'm here with Haley Simon, our good friend from Philly Sports Network, and Locked On Blues. We are Locked On Flyers on Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and Twitter as well. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more as the playoffs are done. The sports stop sporting as we want them to, but this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a booster bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit fanduel.com/lockedon to get started. You can find our show over on YouTube or on the SiriusXM app or anywhere you listen to podcasts. Subscribe to get our latest episode as soon as it's available here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Haley, welcome and thank you so much for filling in as Russ is in travel hell.
I got you. I know. I feel so bad for Russ coming to the draft and then getting back from the draft. It has been awful for him. So happy to be here.
Well, Haley was at the draft as well, so has a lot of inside info on our new draft picks. Russ will be back. We'll talk dev camp, all those new NHL rules, free agency, and more when he returns. We got to rewind a little bit to the Cam Atkinson buyout because we have not had a chance to discuss that on this show. And I think ultimately it was the right thing to do, but it does hurt from a dead cap perspective.
It definitely does. And that's the thing. I mean, right now the Flyers are in cap space hell. They need to free up some space right now. Free agency is going on. And the Flyers don't have much money there. So I get buying out Atkinson. Obviously, with Michkov coming over, you need to give him money. But I did personally like Atkinson. I thought that he was one of these guys that treated the media very well. He did a lot for Flyers charities and an overall good guy, good locker room guy. But that's not enough for the Philadelphia Flyers right now. You can be a good guy off the ice, but what they need on the ice, he just couldn't provide. And granted, he did have those neck surgeries. So I know that his play hasn't been the same, and he was healthy scratched a lot this past season. So it's not a surprise. But at some point, I just hope that he hangs up the skates because going out like this is not, how any player should go out.
Yeah, and I think I was willing to eat the salary for one more year given his leadership and because he does so much off the ice as well. But the Flyers decided otherwise, and I think that's fine too. But wishing him the best of luck. Now, we heard a lot from Danny Briere about the draft, but there was a lot of non-draft info that he gave as well at the end of the draft on day 2. And the first is about free agency, which starts today and is already moving as of recording. It seems like they're going to re-sign Erik Johnson, but other than that, not much going, right?
Nope. And that's a little bit of the frustrating part about the Philadelphia Flyers right now is that free agency is so good. You have so many really excellent players. You have a Brandon Montour right now that no one has picked up yet. But you do have really good solid players in free agency, but because of their lack of money, they can't sign any of these guys. I mean, Sam Reinhart, he went back with the Florida Panthers 8 years, and I believe that he's making over $8 million, close to $9 million during that time. The Flyers don't have that kind of money. So they can't even offer guys like a Sam Reinhart, to come to Philadelphia. So free agency is going to suck. I feel like the only move is going to be Erik Johnson, and that's it.
Yeah, and I think given where they are in the rebuild, I'm mostly okay with that. I think I would have done better as a veteran depth defenseman than bringing Erik Johnson back personally. But I think that, given everything in the cap crunch, I would rather have the guys we have now and give some prospects a chance to play a little bit more for this year. Because I feel like this is our last year to do that.
Yep. Well, they can't afford to do it next
Yeah.
season. Once Michkov comes over, I'm assuming he's going to get here for training camp. So hopefully by September, big hopefully if he gets the visa. Um, Everyone in Philadelphia is going to be looking at the Philadelphia Flyers as a potential playoff team because of one player. Reality is that may not happen. So you have this season to kind of, work all the things that you need to with the younger guys. Next season, if you don't have that support for a guy like Michkov, you don't have the defense improving significantly with younger players that are good on the power play. We need the power play. That's a big focus. People are going to check out again. The rebuild can only be a rebuild for so long. And that's the
Yes.
part about this.
Yep, absolutely. So they did qualify Bobby Brink and Igor Zamula, which is good. We got final word that they did not qualify Carter Hart. There was some question as to whether they would have to. They decided not to in the end, as well as Will Smolik and Mason Millman, which I know Russ is going to be sad about Mason Millman. but
But I mean, with Carter Hart, I feel like, without getting into all the details about the case, and for those that don't know, like his contract was literally already up. So
yep,
he hasn't played since January 24th, I want to say. I get the whole thing with the NHL is a little confusing, but to put into terms, even if he is found not guilty, it's still a long time not playing hockey. And I think for any player not to be on the ice for that long of a time, it's a big risk to just sign them and have
yep,
them sit. It's 4 point something million to sit at home, basically. So, no, I don't think the Flyers are, doing this because it just wouldn't make sense. As
yep.
far as the other guys, I know Russ is going to be upset. But again, if they don't see them as part of the future, then what's the point of re-signing? But I like
Yep.
Brink. I like Zamula. Zamula really stood out to me this season as a player that could really contend. And Bobby Brink is such a fun player to watch on the ice. He has great speed, a great hockey IQ, is really good at reading the rink. So I'm glad that they made some offers to them.
Yeah, we still don't know about Ryan Johansson and his injury and the buyout situation, so that's a stay tuned there. But I want to get into the draft and day two because again, you were there, in person, and I think when you look at day two, given that they traded away their second first round pick, day two was going to be really important. And I was just really curious what you thought about their picks relative to conventional wisdom in the lists out there because they seem to be scared that certain guys they wanted were going to get swiped before they picked them and thus moved up right in the second round. But these guys weren't necessarily on a lot of people's radar.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I found really funny about it. For instance, Spencer Gill, I had him going because he was a guy that I wanted the Flyers to get, but I had him going in the late second or early third round. So I was a little bit surprised by that trade up for him as well. I feel like on night one of the draft, Danny, he traded down, got rid of a pick. I'm like, okay, maybe, they're going after guys that people may not be thinking of going after right away. And then all of a sudden, round two, I'm like, okay, Danny is now panicking. Like there is some panic, but at the same time, they're going to have so many picks next year, which I'm not worried about. I have to, go through it all because Columbus actually did defer the pick that the Flyers were supposed to have. They ended up having it instead. So you think about all the picks that Philadelphia has for next draft. I'm not worried about it, but it was a little funny and ironic that, on night one, he ended up going down.
Yeah,
And then the second, it was, oh, let me go up. No one was going to take Spencer Gill anyways, by the way.
no. I know. That's what was so weird to me is that part of it. But I don't dislike Spencer Gill. I think, there's some questions there and we'll get into, the specifics in the next segment for these guys. But it was very clear that they were looking at size. They were looking at the center position and then supplementing with defense, right?
And that's what I thought going into this draft too, that they're going to really be aggressive with the centers because even Danny himself said that last week that was their priority was to find really solid centers. The defense, it makes sense considering the lack of depth that the Flyers have on defense. And again, I think that's a focus that they need to really work on when it comes to developing now these prospects. Now that you have them, you have to develop them. But this draft, I mean, some of the picks were a little bit, I was confused about some of them, but I feel like they kind of went after the guys that they knew that they wanted. Noah Powell was a guy that I actually was a little bit, I was like, really? That's who you're going to go after? I thought that was an interesting one. But other than that, I feel like all their picks were it made sense.
Yeah, I think this is definitely going to be a wait and see draft class in terms of how things pan out. I think there's some questions, but I also think there's a lot of potential with these picks. The one thing though that I will say is that Russ and I emphasized that they needed to pick a goalie in this draft, and they did not, which I thought was very curious.
Right. I thought that was weird too. I thought at least one goalie. You're in a situation, by the way, the Philadelphia Flyers, for as we just talked about Carter Hart, you don't have that franchise goalie right now. Yes, they're going to put, I guess, Sam Ersson to be, the starting goalie next season. But is he a franchise goalie? And I hate to be negative because I feel bad. Ersson's put in so much effort, but I don't think he is. And we drafted a goalie that ended up winning the Stanley Cup about a couple weeks. No, it was last week at this point. So the Flyers have drafted well when it comes to goalies, but they didn't get any. So I was actually curious if they're going to try doing free agency to get a goalie, but it doesn't seem like that now.
Yeah, I mean, there are some goalies in the system. Carson Bjarnason is one of them as well. We have Ivan Fedotov ostensibly as the backup. They're not going to buy out Cal Peterson. So, we're set for the next little bit. But after that is the question I have. And that's where my concern lies. But we are going to dig into those day two picks. We're going to do that coming up next. I love sports and I never want them to stop. But as we are in full swing for the summer sports, we do miss hockey. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a booster bonus daily. That's right, there's something for everyone every day, all summer long. FanDuel has odds for Wimbledon tennis, the Paris Olympics with over-unders on medal counts by country, Euros, Copa America, and so much more. So head over to fanduel.com/locked on and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Free agency starts today, and so we'll talk about that on later shows as well as answering your mailbag questions. So get them in. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail, send us a message on Twitter, or comment on our YouTube channel. So Haley, these round two picks, the first one, Jack Berglund, a center from Sweden, he was there. And so what did you get from him on site at the draft?
I thought he actually was very intelligent. I think that that's a very overwhelming day. But what I got out of him is a guy that knows that he does have speed, which I do like about him. And it's also the consistency from him. So I thought I was actually a little bit surprised because sometimes with media guys, they can be a little bit more tense. I thought he felt very confident. So I thought there was a lot of potential for him on that.
Yeah, I think, the prognosticator said he was a bottom six guy. Flair says that he thinks he could be potentially more than that. He does need to get a little bit faster, but that he's like a really well rounded center
Right. And he's
and really smart.
And that's the thing too. I mean, even watching clips of him, I feel like I've been just studying the guys that we picked before
Right.
head of development camp tomorrow. But on the penalty kill, he's phenomenal. And again, that's the guys that the Flyers needed to get. So I do feel like there is potential with him there. And you can be assessed as a bottom six type of player, and with hard work, you can achieve anything. And I know that sounds very cliche, but right now the Philadelphia Flyers, their development with players isn't bad. So I feel like if he's in the system, why not see how he goes?
Yeah, and I think, he mentioned specifically that he's going to be fighting hard for a spot on his club's SHL team next season. And if he can do that, I think that'll put him in a really good position as far as his development goes. He mentioned having some overlap with Adam Ginning. in that organization, so he knows the Flyers a little bit through Jennings, which is good. And I know that's a good organization over there for development as well. And so I think like this is a really solid pick with a lot of potential here.
And that's what I got out of it too. And I feel like, again, whenever you have a pick, because I mean, the pick that he was in, it was the 59th overall pick, right? Um, that's still a good player. It's not like you're waiting till the end of the draft. You're still going after guys that are really good players. And just because, by the way, a guy is drafted in the second round doesn't mean that they don't have the ability to be a really good NHL player. I feel like people get into the notions that, oh, you have to be drafted in the first round only. Not the case. And he is a good depth piece player. There's so much potential with him. But most importantly, it's the penalty kill, it's his hockey IQ, very smart guy on the ice. And usually that correlates. If you're good on the penalty kill or you're good on a power play, chances are your hockey IQ is good, because being on a special team situation is something where you have to have some brains going into it.
Yeah, absolutely. That was our 51st pick. The 59th pick was Spencer Gill, a right-handed defenseman. Big guy, 6'4", not too shabby there. I think, you know, this is an interesting kid because we have talked on our show about how the Q is less of a good development league as it used to be. So picking a guy from the queue is a little bit risky. And he did fall a little bit after U18s, like Danny Briere said. But he is a solid two-way defenseman that can step up offensively, has really good hockey sense, and is able to manage his size well at such a young age. And I think that's the key part for him, right?
It definitely is. And another thing too that he did mention is that Noah Dobson is his like NHL idol who he looks up to, which
Hmm.
is another good sign. I think it's interesting when you talk to these players and you can really get a sense of who they model their game after. And even Flair was talking to about his physicality and, as you said, being able to manage that. And anytime a guy, I mean, you have to remember he is 6'4". He weighs 185. That's a big
Right.
guy. It's not like we're talking about a guy that's 6'1", 6'4". Then you have skates on, so you're standing at what, probably 6'6", 6'7". Big guy, and he plays so smoothly and gracefully. And I know with hockey, that's not what you always want to hear. But again, skating is such a strength in its own. So not only does he have good skating abilities, but he's also to then able to use his size, which shows again poise, and that means something to this organization to have that poise. And another thing too is that I like that we drafted a right-handed defenseman. I feel like, getting a left-handed defenseman, I know that that's important too. You need both guys on both sides. But there's something about getting a right-handed defenseman that has so much potential that makes me excited about some possibilities with the organization and guys that we can bring in that are left-handed defensemen. And I feel like there's more potential veteran left-handed defensemen out there in the market. But
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too. Really excited about his transition work as well. Really good at the breakout, and that's what you need is a guy that can be physical, but also is going to get the puck out of the zone. And so I have good feeling about his potential here. We'll see what he looks like moving forward. Want to talk about the round 4 pick in Heikki Ruohonen, excuse me.
using names.
Yeah. Uh, this was an interesting pick to me as well. Another center, first off, but it's his path that interests me a lot because he is Finnish, but he's coming over to North America, playing in the USHL. Again, a really excellent developing situation for him. He's going to Harvard after that. So I feel like the potential for him to grow as a player is really strong.
Good potential there. I was a little surprised again that they went for another center. I know Danny said, hey,
Yeah.
we get centers. At what point is it too much though? And again, there was other areas that I thought the Philadelphia Flyers organization could have maybe went after. But again, I want to say that I trust what they're doing because they're still very new in management. And I feel like they know the path that they have to go on. But this guy, smart, obviously go to Harvard. So smart guy intelligently, but on the ice too, he is a guy that has good skill. He's good with his stick handling. And I can't be too negative. That's the one thing. I know sometimes Russ, he always says to me in the press box, oh, you're too negative. I can be because I just see, both ways. I hope he pans out. I don't know if he will with this team.
Yeah, I mean, this is round 4 is definitely a we'll see situation. So,
but development
well,
camp he'll be at, so we'll get a good look at him and see how he skates in person. So
yeah, Noah Powell was another interesting pick in round 5 at 148 overall. He's a re-entry pick going to Ohio State. Interestingly, there are going to be ships passing in the night with Rahonen leaving or going to Dubuque and Noah Powell leaving Dubuque in the USHL. But he had a really strong February, which is why his stats are packed. But there's a reason why he's a re-entry pick. And I think this is a good pick to make and a good risk to take in round 5. But there is absolutely a reason why he did not go until round 5.
Yeah, and again, as I mentioned earlier in today's episode, I said that he was the one that I was kind of iffy about. I'm all for an underdog story, but anytime there is a re-entry, it just brings me some concern. Why is it that other teams didn't see interest in him? And even though it's round 5, I was actually surprised that they took him then, because I feel like even if they didn't take him at that pick, he would have still been available in round 6 or so forth, even around 7. So I was a little surprised that that's who they went after in round 5.
Yeah, and then the last couple of picks, Ilya Potov, who's a right winger currently in the MHL in Russia, won't be at Dev Camp, but there was a particular scout who was obsessed with him and wanted the Flyers to pick him. So they did. Again, we'll see. He was an assist leader for his MHL team this past year. And so again, we'll see. He's under contract through 25-26 in Russia. And that's another let him cook and see what happens. And then I think in round 7, the Austin Moline pick was so nice just because he was a local Vegas kid. And so he had all his friends and family, and he's a Shattuck kid. So again, a lot of good training at Shattuck St. Mary's Prep there. What did you hear from Austin on site?
I really like Austin. I know I just talked about, later draft picks not panning out, but there's something about a 7th round draft pick that would be such a beautiful story to happen. I mean, he said that Alex Pietrangelo was his hockey model. And Pietrangelo, I mean, I do Locked On Blues, obviously was our former captain, got us the cup there, but he is such a great player and a great player to look after. And, he also talked to, and he really did mention about his ability on ice and how he's willing to work hard and how he is a great two-way defenseman. So I feel like anytime a player feels like, I'm going to work hard for you, that's what a Philadelphia Flyer is. A Philadelphia Flyer is a player that gets on the ice and works hard. So for me, I have a good feeling about him. Maybe he won't make the team. Maybe he'll just be with Lehigh. But either way, he's a good guy to have in the organization. So this is the first 7th round draft pick I think that we've had in quite a while where I'm like, I kind of like him. I know Ivan Fedotov was a 7th round.
Right.
There's something about these 7th round draft picks that just give me such excitement.
Yeah, it's fun.
Was a 7th round draft pick, and he had a really successful career. He was the only one that was a 7th rounder that ended up being that successful, but it's possible.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll see how that goes. But we want to talk a little bit about the draft in general and the atmosphere in Vegas, as well as get to our new poll this week and our Nemesis of the week. I'm excited to see what Haley comes up with for that coming up next. All right, Haley. So what was your take on the draft as a whole? Just the sphere, Vegas, the whole thing?
It had really bad Wi-Fi, so that's my takeaway. No, but it was a really cool atmosphere. There was a moment right before the draft where I was just on the floor, just kind of looking around before the fans came in, and I'm like, "This is what a draft is." It's really hard to describe the sphere because it's so unrealistic, like with how it's set up. But on the ceiling, even it just everywhere you looked, you would just see like hockey stuff. And it was a good atmosphere. It felt good. It felt really good. You saw a lot of Flyers fans there. I saw Actually,
That's
Jet's
cool.
parents in the parking lot, we had a really nice conversation. But there was a huge turnout for Philadelphia. So it was good to see that. I thought our draft picks were well. I know how Philadelphia fans can be. Oh no, this wasn't good enough. But I really do think that I saw a confident Danny Briere and Keith Jones and team. And the scouts of the Flyers are really good scouts. So if they particularly like a player, there's a reason as to why. So overall, the draft, I would give it a 7 out of 10. That's because the guy that I wanted, Sam Dickinson, went right with the Sharks, and that kind of ruined my day. But other than that, it was good.
Yeah, I'm sure Teddy Stiga going elsewhere ruined Russ's day. So there's always that flip side to the draft in terms of your faves going elsewhere. Happens to me every year, and I get upset about it.
It was, you know,
But
what was funny too. As soon as the Sharks went up, I looked at a bunch of the people that are in the press box usually, and I'm like, watch it be my luck that he goes to them. And as soon as it happens, I'm like, yep, that's typical hockey for you. Hockey guys
yeah,
were not, but Danny said that Jet was always their guy. So
yep,
that makes sense.
absolutely. All right, our new poll for this week, of course, will be draft related now that it is done. And how would you rate the Philadelphia Flyers draft out there? The poll is already listed on YouTube right now. There's a link to it in the show notes. Your options are excellent, nailed it, pretty solid, just okay, and the worst, fire everybody. So those are your choices. Give some justification for your selection in the comments, and we'll look forward to talking about it later this week on the show. For our nemesis of the week, last week I talked a lot about trade rumors and how there was all this stuff going around. You know, are they going to trade Konechny? Are the Flyers going to trade for somebody? And it was getting a little bit out of hand. And so I was like, can we just not with these trade rumors right now? But this week, I feel like my nemesis is this mental whiplash from the draft to dev camp and this real off season beginning, you know, free agency, which I know the Flyers aren't going to be super active in, but is important nonetheless. And there's important things to follow around the league for free agency to see what our competitors in the division, especially, are up to. But yeah, it is a huge whiplash from the draft to this week's activities.
So my nemesis of the week, it has to deal with free agency. I am furious, beyond furious, that the Philadelphia Flyers are not going to be active during free agency. I think it's the biggest mistake that you can make, and I'll tell you why without being too angry. There are so many great players right now that are up in free agency. You have guys like Steven Stamkos, and I know that they want to get younger. I'm just saying, when it comes to hockey experience and different players, there's so many. The Philadelphia Flyers right now need direction. They need to find direction. When you talk about leaders on the team, I know we have Konechny. He's asking for too much money. I know that you have Lawton. I know you have Couturier. He doesn't always show up. You need somebody else to come to this organization and help drive it. I think it's a mistake not going after one of these veteran players and going after somebody in free agency.
Yeah, I see that. It's tough because, you know, with the cap situation and where they are the rebuild, I generally do think it's okay for just this year that they're not active in free agency. It is frustrating when there's guys like Steven Stamkos out there for the taking, and you
David
know,
Perron,
but but yeah, but like what would they bring to the team this year, and do we want to spend that kind of money on them this year? And you know, will there be other free agents available when the time comes and the Flyers really need it? Absolutely. So I'm trying to be patient, but it is kind of less fun to be out of the fray.
it
For
is. And
sure.
you look at the New Jersey Devils, and they're rumored to be getting all these different players. And I hate the Devils. And I'm like, I don't want them to be successful. But when it comes to a veteran player on the team, I feel like somebody with more playoff experience, somebody that's won the cup, it would be helpful to have those type of players come into the organization. So then they can show the younger guys, okay, well, this is how you have to play, you know, in a situation where you have like a minute left, you need to get one goal to tie up the game. I feel like the Flyers are lacking some of that drive that I see from these really competitive, strong hockey organizations. So would it be the worst thing to maybe have that for the younger guys to see? Maybe. But again, this season, as you said, is the last acceptable season. Next season, if they do this again, then I have to say the rebuild is done.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll see how that goes, but I have some faith in what they are doing for the time being.
I'm too
And
negative. Kind of like Russ. I'm negative.
all right. Well, maybe it's appropriate we had you on the show to balance out my general positivity here. But that will do it for today's show. We are going to talk free agency, dev camp, all that on tomorrow's show. As a reminder, we always want to hear from you. So get those mailbag questions in on Twitter at Locked On Flyers. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail or comment over on YouTube. I'm Rachel. I'm on Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM. And Haley, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Haley T. Simon.
Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube that's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Have a great day, everyone.